Nurture and support begins in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Nurture and Support, a recommendation podcast. I'm Kelly Toole at KELLYTHUL on Twitter. And with me, as always, is Mel.
Hey, everybody. It's Mel at Karmic9 on Twitter. And we have a special show for y'all tonight. But I think Kelly might have a special announcement to do before we get into that.
Thank you very much, Mel. Yes, I do. Basically, my life is one long apology. I'm always I'm sorry for this, I'm sorry for that, I'm sorry if you thought I could understand a simple instruction. I just have to apologize a lot because I'm an idiot. And I have exceeded even myself in my silliness and stupidness here recently. Our good friend, Alicia Halm, let me say that again, Alicia Halm was on the show last week, and except for the very beginning of the show and the very end of the show, I had chosen to refer to her as Alicia through the entire broadcast. It's about 200 references of Alicia through there, made even all the more painful by Mel and Alicia recognizing I had a problem and trying gently to kind of put her name out correctly, repeatedly, kind of going through, just non-judgmentally, very kind. They're very kind people, and they kept kind of throwing it out, but I was having none of it, and she was Alicia. And Mel finally dialed it up a little bit because I had, further compounded by I had to choose to have my element of recommendation include all of our names. So that made me, I was repeating the names a lot. And so somewhere in there I was pointing out that Kelly was outperforming in the show. I said Alicia and Mel, and at one point during the conversation, Mel said something along the lines of, I wonder how Alicia did. There was something in there that, again, should have been a less than subtle hint at that point that I was off track. But again,
I don't remember that. I think that must have happened accidentally in the editing process, if you heard it that way. You're just being too personal. That didn't happen.
Yeah, it wasn't mean. I mean, you guys were both very, very nice when you should have slapped me upside the head. But so I listened to the podcast as I was mowing this past weekend, and just my head kept dropping lower and lower as the show went on. So as soon as I got done mowing, I jumped in and got an email and sent Alicia an apology letter for it. And but I also wanted to just formally apologize to her for not being able to manage her name right. And I've instituted a 50-cent fine that if she is willing to join us again, every time I refer to her as Alicia, she gets 50 cents American. So
you mean Alicia? You said it right that time.
I said, yeah, if I say it, okay. See, this is going to be a problem. So I need a second job to pay whatever. She's going to do very well. She should come back on the show because there's a cash windfall coming her way. And then just again, I wanted to apologize to Alicia. I don't know why I did that. I apologize. It's horrible of me. And then to add injury or insult to injury, our good friend Mike, Official Pagan on Twitter, who I work with on the Snarkaholic Radio Show, on a recent show mispronounced my last name, which many people do because if you look at it, you assume it's pronounced Thule, but it's pronounced Tool. And I figure after someone's interacted with me for a certain period of time, I don't know, like about the amount of time I have interacted with Alicia, that they could get my name right. And Mike, somewhere in the show, slipped out a Thule. And I reacted with great umbrage to this slight. So now I have to apologize to Mike because it would be a little hypocritical for me to get all judgy on because her name's spelled like you should pronounce it. My name's not, and I couldn't. So sorry to Alicia, sorry to Mike, sorry to everybody else, and thank you, Mel, for letting me cleanse my soul. Appreciate it.
There you go. Confession is good for you.
That's right.
It was not bad, and Alicia was not offended at all. Kelly's just feeling terrible about saying Alicia.
Over and over again. It was terrible.
Oh, it's not that bad. Y'all all chime in and tell Kelly it's a common mistake, and we'll move on. We'll try not to speak of it again, but I can't make any promises.
I bet you it comes up if I were a betting man. So we'll see. But you'll certainly help keep count the next show to see if I how much cash she walks out with.
Yes.
So Mel mentioned it's a special episode, and it is what we are both huge Breaking Bad fans, and we had been talking for a while about maybe we'll dedicate one show basically recommending Breaking Bad. In addition, so if you've not watched it, this show is us trying to convince you to watch it because it is incredibly awesome. If you have watched it, it gives you at least some insight into why Mel liked it, why I liked it, and we'd love to kind of hear from you if you've watched it. So whether you haven't watched Breaking Bad or you have, the show is still for you. It just depends. The outcome is we want to get you, if you haven't watched it, to watch it, and you'll thank us. But we'll still also have our social media recommendations at the end. But because it's such a tightly themed show, they'll be related to Breaking Bad. So we'll go there. So
Yes.
So to start off, I'll kick off a little bit. Mel and I initially thought we'd just talk a little bit about why we would dedicate a whole show recommending Breaking Bad, why it was so good. I came upon it probably during it ran 5 seasons, and I didn't really start getting into it until the fourth season. I had a gentleman at work who kept coming up to me saying he knew I liked Walking Dead, and I had watched and Lost and these types of things, and he's like, well, you need to watch Breaking Bad because it's the best show on television. And I was kind of like, yeah, that's the show with that Bryan Cranston guy from Malcolm in the Middle, and he used to like to wear his underwear in Malcolm in the Middle a lot, and based on what I've seen, he's carrying that trait forward into this show, and that's not what I'm down for. And so I delayed, and I finally watched the pilot and the first season on Netflix. And each successive show, I started to understand a little bit better what he was getting at. I'm saying it was such a great show. And it is on a lot of fronts, and we'll talk about it. So I did my massive catch-up. I got to watch season 4 all the way through, and then season 5, the final season, broken into 2 parts, like AMC does to us now from time to time to increase the pain factor, I guess, and just totally enjoyed it. And around, I think, just before season 5 started, I started badgering Mel with vigor to say, you need to do this. This is really good. This is really good. So, Mel, why don't you step us through your introduction to Breaking Bad?
Well, first off, I never would have guessed that you didn't want to see middle-aged men in tidy whities.
That would shocker, I know.
For all of you who aren't familiar with Breaking Bad, Bryan Cranston, who plays Walter White, does have a couple of appearances in his tidy whities, and it's iconic moments from the show. Like Kelly said, he badgered me on Snark Alec Radio particularly, and on Twitter, that I needed to watch Breaking Bad. And it's a show that I knew a little bit about, but I was a big Walking Dead fan as well. And I just hadn't watched anything else on AMC. And I always loved, when I first heard about it, I loved the idea of a high school chemistry teacher who breaks bad and becomes a drug dealer. There was just something real about that, where we turn, some mousy character into a big bad. And I always liked the idea of it, but I never got around to actually watching the show until Kelly started badgering me, telling me how good it is. It's great, and you need to catch up, because it was actually, I think it was probably right after the first half of season 5 ended, because I think the only part I watched actually live was the very last half of season 5. And wasn't there like a year break in between them?
Pretty close.
Yeah, it was really long. So I had the time in between to catch up on all of the previous seasons, and then unfortunately I only got to watch the last half of season 5 live with the rest of the world, and it was awesome. It was lovely. And I still love the whole binge experience of watching episode after episode after episode. I spent several weekends doing nothing but marathoning Breaking Bad, and it was great. And that's how I came to the show. It, of course, has Aaron Paul in it as well, who is just a sweetie. I just love him. So that's about my introduction to it. I just loved the whole idea. I'm a nerd. I loved having a chemistry teacher. The idea that a chemistry teacher was going to go bad and be this big evil guy. Or is he? Is he really the villain? Or is he not? That's the question.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about the show. I mean, because it is, and they've been saying that, no characters in a major television series, no one's ever kind of navigated a character all the way from a clear protagonist to a clear antagonist. That was the arc that they went through, Mr. Chips to Scarface type of thing. What I always found interesting in Walter White and Bryan Cranston, Malcolm in the Middle aside, which is, first of all, he's a great comedic actor, and that was the role, and he was very, very good at that role. So you wouldn't expect for him to be able to deliver it wouldn't be your initial assumption that he could kill it dramatically. But as far as an actor goes, this guy's amazing. I binge view it, and I go back. I've gotten the very cool collector set DVD thing, and the whole process. You just kind of hear. He not only is he a great actor, but he kind of nurtures and supports everyone around him to do some things. But he's also just a complete cut up. He's like, I think Aaron Paul described him as the least professional, most professional person I know. In this kind of combination, he's a goof on the set and has a lot of fun, but also really takes his craft seriously. And the writers say that it was really cool because a lot of times they would have whole big scenes because not only was Bryan Cranston great, as Mel mentioned, Aaron Paul, in addition to being a sweetie, I'll let Mel keep that assessment, is also can rip it up as far as acting goes as well. And his character goes through a lot, and he has to show a wide range of things going on with him. But basically, every actor on this was very good at their craft, and they could convey points of a scene with no dialogue. That basically is like you cut up to this character's face, and you could just read on their face them going through like a three-step thing of, oh, I'm concerned about this, and now I'm getting determined, and now I know what I'm going to do. And you see it. It was just as easy as if they said that. And so the acting was certainly one thing that brought me into it. They shot it in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I think it was the original pilot had them in a city in California, but Albuquerque, New Mexico has a lot of incentives for people to come film there. And so it became a cost-effective method for them to go there. And that was a pleasant surprise because so you've got great actors, which makes it a great show. And then the next thing is the cinematography and the actual, Albuquerque almost becomes a character here.
Yeah. I hadn't realized that was the case. I didn't hear that part.
Yeah, and you get to learn new words like Mel. Where was the place that Walt and Jesse first cooked meth, and later bad things happened at?
Oh God! No, see, you're gonna hit me out of the blue with it.
I didn't mean. I realized that's not fair. Yeah, because Tahajali.
Yes.
That ring?
Tahajali.
Which is the actual episode name. And so we've already established how great I am at pronouncing things. The fact that I can say Tahajali is testament to the power of Breaking Bad, which is actually an Indian reservation in New Mexico. And the pilot, when Walt and Jesse, and one of the things Mel and I are going to try and do in this is we want to give you a lot of ideas about the show so you have a really good sense about it. We also don't want to spoil it for you. So we're going to do our best, although I think it's going to be hard every once in a while to not give away huge plot points. But there will be elements. So like shocker, Walt does cook meth, and shocker, he does it with Jesse. So I think that's not too big of a spoiler. But their first cook together was actually filmed in Tahajali, which is just beautiful. It's bright blue skies and red rock and just desert, and it's just gorgeous.
Yeah, it was really. And then that episode at the end, that was just sad. There's a big episode at the end of season 5 entitled Tahajali.
Yeah.
So and it's cruel. It's a cruel desert.
Indeed it is.
You'll love it, people.
So I don't think that this is too big of a spoiler, Mel, but I'm going to guess possibly one of your favorite quotes or terms did come out of the pilot from Jesse in Tahajali when he climbs on top of a cliff and sees something in the distance.
And he asks, what's that?
Well, he gets up there. What did the Jesse see over there, Mel?
A cow house.
Cow houses,
A cow house.
where they
Yes.
keep the cows. So
Oh, Jesse is
sweet.
so lovable. Y'all are just gonna have to watch it. Jesse is that loser punk that everybody knows who doesn't have a mean bone in his body, but he's not above cooking some meth. And he's just a dumb kid. He's just a dumb kid. Cow houses. It's awesome.
Where they keep the and Walt, who's apparently just fell short of winning a Nobel Prize and pretty sharp guy. It's like, what? Cow houses, where they keep the
The
cows.
cows.
Uh,
Yeah.
Duh.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I do think, wouldn't you say that? And he definitely I think you captured Jesse really well. But Jesse, over the years of the show, goes through a lot of stuff, and
He
really,
does.
by the end, he actually starts. He comes up with a couple ideas on some things that were really impressive. Kind of, he
Yeah.
in his own Jesse way, but he gets, he seems to be like he's not stupid. He's just kind of a goof, but he gets pretty smart, and he is a incredibly likable character.
Yeah, it takes a lot to make Jesse make some hard decisions in the end and do some questionable things. But what I really loved about Jesse and Walt in the early seasons is how Walt was a teacher, and he really did, despite we know that he's going to start cooking meth. I mean, I think everybody probably knows why he starts cooking meth. That's pretty common knowledge, don't you think?
I
Or
think
is that
so.
a spoiler?
No,
Okay.
I think that's
So Walt gets cancer, and he decides that he's going to die and he needs to leave money for his family. And so his big idea, given that his brother-in-law is a DEA agent, he decides to cook meth and make a bunch of money to leave to his family when he dies. And he's a school teacher. And when he and Jesse get together, his relationship with Jesse was such a kind of a father-son relationship, or definitely a mentor relationship, even though he would roll his eyes at all the stupid crap that would come out of Jesse's mouth. Because he is like I said, every punk kid out there mashed up together into one. And they just had such a good relationship. Walt was almost more fatherly to Jesse than he was to his own son. It definitely seemed like sometimes he liked Jesse a lot more than he liked his own son. So I just loved their relationship, especially at the beginning, which makes kind of some of the things that happen towards the end even more painful for everyone when you do get the feeling that Walter does actually care about Jesse. So I know that's ambiguous to everyone out there who hasn't seen it, but it's a good reason to watch to find out what happens and how they get there. Because it really is a great relationship. They have one of the greatest relationships in television, I think.
Yeah, and those two together, the chemistry, just the how it was written, how it was acted, and just the whole. It is just a tremendous relationship, and the first season was only 6 episodes long because it was ended early due to the writer's strike. And we're very fortunate that that's what happened because the original arc was that, as Mel mentioned, Walt has cancer. He goes, okay, I need to leave money for my family. I know chemistry. I can cook meth, make money, leave it to him. I'm good. And Jesse, a former student of his, is who he begins to do it with. But the original plan was to have Jesse killed off right towards the end of season one, and then that becomes a part of the story of Walt wanting to settle the score with the individual who killed Jesse. But they realized, after seeing Aaron Paul and Bryan Cranston together and what was happening there, that they could write a lot better story by keeping Jesse around.
Yes.
But I guess pretty much every script that came out, Cranston would go up to Aaron Paul and go like, have you read this week's episode? Like, sorry to see you go. It's been a pleasure.
Oh,
and
that's fun. They're so good, and then when you see interviews with them, they seem They seem just as good off screen as they are on screen. It's a wonderful thing to see. And you would never know from watching Bryan Cranston and Malcolm in the Middle, or even just to look at him in an interview. Man, you would never look at him and then see the Walt of the last couple of seasons, that menacing bald face, and he's scary. And you would never think that the dad from Malcolm in the Middle could possibly be that frightening, but he is. He's a great actor, and it's a great character. I have frequently said since Breaking Bad ended that I thought Breaking Bad broke television for me, because after Breaking Bad, everything else has just not quite been as good. It was just that epic, and that's not my typical genre of show that I really watch. I really like zombies. I really like science fiction, fantasy type stuff, and this is a real world. This is just a straight up real world drama. And for me to say that I think it was probably the best thing I've seen on television, it's pretty good. So I don't want y'all to take that lightly.
That's right. Yeah, and so you have mentioned that it broke television for you, and while it may not have entirely broke it for me, it definitely has diminished my enjoyment of a couple other shows, where I was just like, oh really, it's good still, but why aren't you doing what because Breaking, So what was it for you? For me, the biggest, I mean, gosh, it's everything. This combination of cinematography, acting, and writing. But I do think, this combination of incredibly strong writers and incredibly strong actors, that it never let you down. That was probably the thing that really stood out for me. I don't know if that was the same for you, Mel, or.
Pretty much. When you watch, especially like the way that I did it with binge watching all those seasons up until the last half of the last season, and you get this with most shows, like we've said this in the past when we've watched Walking Dead marathons from the first couple of seasons, at least I have said it, that you get a much greater sense of how the story fits together when you binge watch and you watch them back to back. When you watch them week to week, sometimes you lose some of those nuances in there. But what I saw with Breaking Bad was from the very first episode to the very last episode, it seemed like they knew exactly where the story was going. They knew exactly what was going to happen, and it flowed. There was nothing crazy off there where you go, oh, that was an off episode, or where are they going with this? The whole story fit together seamlessly to the end, and we should probably mention that Kelly told me about a podcast that the makers of Breaking Bad did, and if you listen to that, it really tells you all the background of they really didn't know all of those things, but they're so good that when you watch that show, you don't know. You can't tell that they didn't know how the story was going to end when they did the first pilot. But you would never know it.
Yeah, and we'll include a link to that podcast in the blog entry for this week's show, because as awesome as Breaking Bad was to watch, my enjoyment of it was enhanced all the more because of that podcast. It was called Breaking Bad Insider. And Kelly Dixon, who ends up being, she didn't edit the pilot, but she became part of the editorial team. There were at least two editors that kind of flip-flop back and forth for the remainder of the time Breaking Bad was on. She was one of them, and she caught Vince Gilligan, I believe, during season 2, and said, hey, we should start doing a podcast. And Vince Gilligan didn't know what a podcast was. And she's like, well, I just, I record you. Neither do Mel and I. We're trying to figure out what a podcast is. She said, we just talk. You answer some stuff, and we put it out there, and people listen to it. And Vince Gilligan, who seems like a genuinely self-deprecating guy, just seems, I think, proud of his accomplishments and takes pride in his work, but also almost bends over backwards to give other people credit and acknowledge good work by others. But he's like, really? Who'd want to listen to me? Why? That sounds horrible. But he did it, and initially it was just him and Kelly, and then all of a sudden they started pulling in all the cast members. So you get Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul and Jonathan Banks, who we'll talk about here in a little bit. And it was just fascinating, where they would go through the nuances of, well, we had to quit shooting here because that family who was super nice, and Marge and Fred, they sold the house, and so we had to do something there.
Yeah.
And so you get some of the backstory, that actual developments in the plot about, well, this house isn't in play anymore, had less to do with their arc and more to do with, well, we can't shoot there anymore, so we got to
Yeah.
explain why that's gone. But the podcast, you get inside of, what Vince was thinking, the writers, the actors, and it really adds a lot to each episode you watch, and then the overall arc. But you do hear, like Mel said, that because for season 5, a split season, there's a teaser at the beginning of season 5, which is like a flash forward, and there are 2 or 3 kind of really big elements revealed in that little flash forward at the beginning of the first episode of the final season that reconcile themselves by the end of the series. But apparently, according to the podcast, they had a hunch. They kind of knew generally where things were going, but they didn't have everything figured out to say, well, how are we going to explain this? And why did Walt go do that?
Right.
But it really adds a lot to it too, and that's a free podcast. And so if you haven't watched it, definitely watch it. And as you do, and you catch all those episodes, go back to that Breaking Bad Insider and listen to the podcast. They start off being 30 minutes long, and they're good at 30 minutes. Then they start clocking in at an hour and a half and 2 hours,
Yeah.
but it's still good stuff. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I need to go back and listen to it from the beginning. I think I started listening somewhere about in the middle of season 4 with the episodes, because you had told me I really needed to do that, and wow, it was amazing. Even if you're somebody who doesn't think, oh, I'm not going to care about any of that background information, you just like to watch a show and take it for what it is. It really does help you understand more about what's going on, and it's just amazing. Vince Vaughn is so awesome here. I mean, he's just great.
So I'm not going to be critical here, Mel, but you said Vince Vaughn.
Oh, I did, didn't I? I'm so sorry. We'll have to
completely
apologize.
unacceptable to have somebody mispronouncing a name on this podcast.
It absolutely is. I'm sorry.
Broken new ground.
I know. See, it's catching. It's catching.
Yeah, I know.
It's great.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
That's horrible.
Anyway, I second the recommendation of that podcast. It's awesome, and you should really, really listen to it. And Vince Gilligan is awesome.
Yeah, and it's I mean, I like enjoying something created by pleasant people. And that just seems to be, the drift here is that everybody's excited about the art they're creating. They're all falling over. Oh, the actors are complimenting the writers, and they tease and they kind of pick on each other back and forth. But it's definitely all very good natured. But the camaraderie is very cool in there. But they seem to be genuinely nice people all the way around, and dedicated to putting on something. They want to create something that people enjoy, and they enjoy coming into work. And then towards the end, a couple of the female leads have some fairly intense scenes and activity that goes on, and they came on the podcast during when those were airing, after those had aired, and they were talking about it, and they actually, were tearing up and crying during the podcast, reliving the intensity of some of the episodes and those types of things. And so these people were all in.
Yeah, it's a great cast. Even I have to say, I was not a big Skylar fan. That is Walter's wife, and you really have to give her props though for that last season. It was great. She did a great job with a very difficult role, but you're not supposed to like her very much in the beginning of the show, I don't think. I think that was pretty much the plan. We weren't supposed to like her.
Yeah, boy, I tell you, the jury, it's interesting because the jury is so all over it. And so let's just, and it'll be interesting to see how spoiler free we can stay here. But let's maybe just talk about a couple of the main cast members to give people kind of a sense of. And so to me, this is almost like we're getting to pick our kickball teams. And who do you like, who you don't like, or those types of things. Who would you be picking early? So let's start with Skylar. So my sense is Skylar's not going to be on your team at all.
No.
I would pick her, but I would pick her later. I mean, it's interesting because there are certain things that she does that you're not very happy about, but gosh, put yourself in her shoes in this circumstance, and you kind of go, wow, it's an interesting thing. But so I had a chance to see R.J. Mitty, who played Walt's son, Walt Jr., at C2E2 up in Chicago, and he was very eloquent. Did a really nice young kid, in his early 20s now, but he was talking through it, and the crowd was primed for a lot of Skylar hate. They were like, "Yeah, Skylar hates her," and he was kind of like, "Why? Why? I mean, look at he's like, look at the situation she was. What would you have done differently?" And and so he was not part of the Skylar hate club from there. So okay, so Skylar's not gonna do well. So how about Walt? What do you think there?
Yeah, yeah. If you're on Walt's good side, he'll do anything he has to do for you if he needs you.
Yeah,
So I would pick Walt.
Yeah, if
but I watch him.
Yeah.
Really closely.
Yeah.
But let me put it this way. I don't want Walt on the other team. So he needs to be on my side.
Yeah, and he and there's an intensity and brilliance. He's obviously a very smart man, but yeah, I think you're exactly right there. So I'll stay with that theme, and so another person that I absolutely would not want to see on the other side of the kickball arena is Mike, or Jonathan Banks, who
yes,
and so I don't know if you knew this, Mel, but we're about to come to my favorite character. So I think Mel has mentioned that Jesse is hers. We'll mention mine here in a second. Mike's a close second. I don't know if he's close because the other one's so awesome, but Mike's a strong second. But he would not have been on. But that scene, oh gosh, how do I do this here? There was a scene where Jesse needed a little bit of help cleaning up a situation, and originally Saul Goodman was going to come and help Jesse with that, but Bob Odenkirk was away, unavailable, and so they had to cast a fixer.
I didn't know that.
And so Jonathan Banks, and how fortunate we were, because he's a great actor, and that's another reason to listen to the podcast, because this guy, everybody else is all, I love working and this is really great, and he's kind of just a crotchety old man, and he's like, hey, it was cold, it was stupid. I told Vince I was going to punch him in the heart.
Yeah, he's a great character. He's been in so many different things. But Mike's one of the great characters there, and you have to love him even though he's not such a good guy. Like a whole lot of characters in this show, which is one of the things I like about it, is because it is more indicative of the real world. Almost every character in the show is not black and white. There is no black and white. It's all shades of gray. They're all walking the line between good and evil, and the right thing and the wrong thing. And Mike is very firmly standing on that line. He does some really bad things. Sometimes he does them for a good reason, and sometimes not so much. But he has a code, and you have to respect a man that has a moral code and stands up for it at the end.
So speaking the exact opposite of gray, and speaking the exact opposite of having a moral code, that brings us to my favorite character,
yes.
Saul Goodman, the lawyer who's going to be starring in Better Call Saul, which is going to come on AMC. Vince Gilligan is involved. He's not the main writer this time, but he is involved with it. Peter Gould, who wrote sorry, Peter, now I owe you 50 cents. Peter Gould, who wrote the original Better Call Saul episode, and number ones is the head writer for it, but Vince is clearly connected to it. And I think it's going to be it's a little murky, but I think a large part of it's prequel before the events of Breaking Bad. But there's at least been a little nugget or two dropped to say, well, every once in a while we might see something in the future as well.
Yeah, and Mike's going to be in that.
Yes. So Jonathan Banks is in it as well. So two of the strongest. I mean, it's tough because they're all such good actors, but these are two really great actors. So they'll be really fun. But Saul Goodman, for me, is worth the price of admission, and he didn't show up until midway through season 2. but there's a lot of darkness and intensity of the show, and Bob Odenkirk plays this lawyer who is just he's constantly talking with
Greasy.
his greasy. He's like doing magic tricks. He's like, look over here, look over here. He's talking with his hands all the time because he's doing the sleight of hand, and he just slides through there. He is quite the dresser. Has a very flamboyant style. His face is on billboards and bus stops and everything there. But at his core, he actually, for all the kind of sliminess and slip and slide and all the stuff that goes on, best that I can tell, he's actually a pretty good lawyer. I think he knows what he's doing.
He must be. He must be to get some of the criminals off that he does with, some of the charges he had that were brought against him. But one of his sidekicks is also someone who doesn't make a very big appearance in the show. But what's his name? It was Hugo, wasn't it? Was it
Huel.
Huel. There we go. Yeah, Huel. I liked Huel. He was funny. He was hilarious.
Huel and QB. Yeah.
What was the
I can't remember. QB, which was
QB.
Bill.
Yes.
Yeah. So Bill Burr's in this, and I can't remember. It's LeVar or Laverne. So they're basically, Bob Odenkirk's history was as a writer and a comedian. Bill Burr's a stand-up comic, and the actor that plays Huel is also a stand. So Vince Gilligan has pulled stand-up comics into that because his position was, if you can do comedy, you can do drama. If you can do drama, maybe you can do comedy. So he kind of thought it went one way. But these guys are great. They're smaller roles, but they add a lot. There's some just magical scenes with them at the end.
Yes.
And Huel's just gigantic guy with a bit of a breathing problem. Breathes through his nose loudly. A bit of a digestive tract problem. Needs to use a restroom every once in a while. And
Yeah.
spoil,
And you see what happens when he comes across a big pile of money.
yes.
That's what
Yes,
happened.
indeed.
Yep.
And so they're great. And then speaking of another dynamic duo, Badger and Skinny Pete.
Yes, I love Badger and Skinny Pete. I am totally Team Badger. I like Team Badger.
Yeah,
He
and
is.
Mel
He's fun.
Mel mentioned she likes sci-fi. So Badger, I guess this is also in season 5, delivers his Star Trek script, which is worth a listen, by gosh.
Yes, it is. Oh, it's beautiful. It's a thing of beauty. It really is. If nothing else, I bet that clip is up on YouTube. I'm pretty sure. It's great. He has a script for a Star Trek episode, and it's right there.
All I gotta do is write it down.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, and so yeah, that might be another fun one to we'll throw a couple of these things out there because that doesn't spoil a lot of the arc of the story, but it's amazing. And Skinny Pete got his Star Trek knowledge down.
Yes.
Because he challenges certain things and
Yes.
and he does a really good job there.
It's such a quirky moment to throw into such a serious show, and it's one of the things that's so great about it is that you're dealing with really serious issues here, and in a realistic fashion, because people under stress, we're just not built to be serious all the time. I mean, eventually somebody's going to crack and do something stupid or say something funny. This is what happens with groups of people in tragedies, and it's one of the criticisms I have seen repeatedly about The Walking Dead is that they're like, woe is me, woe is me, woe is me, woe is me since season 1, and they're like, eventually these people have got to take a break and crack a joke at some point, which we didn't see until last season. Really, not that I can recall. So that's one of the criticisms I've seen about The Walking Dead is that, they don't have these little funny moments a lot of times in there. At least not intentionally.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, it's human nature. We all know those people that respond to stress by cracking sarcastic jokes. I happen to be one of them. So it's unrealistic when it's always, oh my God, the zombies are going to eat us. Eventually the zombies are no big deal. But I did love that about Breaking Bad is there's so much humor in this show amidst all of these very dark, serious issues that are going on. I guess there's probably an episode that doesn't have anything funny in it, but I'm hard pressed to tell you which one. Maybe Ozymandias.
Yep, that or Tahajali. I think either one. A couple right towards the very end, the final 3 or 4 episodes. There were not a lot of chuckles left at that.
There's not a lot of laughs, and that fit with the whole and the grief that we're all going through sitting at home, knowing the show's gonna end, to going along with it. But before that end, I don't think there's an episode that you can say didn't have at least some element of comedic relief thrown in there, and that is Skinny Pete and Badger. They show up at all the right moments with their Star Trek lore. It's great.
Yeah, it was, and it's so Skinny Pete is actually very skinny, and Badger's a kind of a bigger guy, and so this I don't think spoils much, but it's just to give you, and just both these guys have like unbridled enthusiasm for what their view of life is about, which is a little bit of meth, a little bit of grass, watch bad science fiction movies, go to strip clubs. This is their world, and they're living it full from there. But at some point in time, Badger was being staked out, and somebody was listening in had bugged Badger's home, and was asked, "Well, did you get anything from the big guy?" And he's like, "Dude, I sat there, and all he did was talk for 5 hours about something called Babylon 5, and to his mother." And so that's Badger, and he's doing a commercial now, which I'm struggling because I keep waiting for him to turn into Badger in the commercial.
I know, poor guy.
Matt. I can't believe I'm going to forget Matt's last name, but he's a very good actor too. So we'll include the IMDb link so you can get to all these people's names we couldn't come up with. So hopefully, I'm trying to think if there's any thing else we want to kind of hit on. I think we've talked about a lot of and the bad guys in this. I mean, so Walt's a bad guy, but the other bad guys, whether it's Tuco or Gus Fring or the brothers, the cartel brothers, there are incredibly strong bad guys through this entire so minor spoiler, there's Nazis.
Yes,
there's Nazis
there are.
in Breaking Bad.
There are.
They're not lovable Nazis, but they're Nazis. So, but those are really interesting characters too.
Right, and that's one of the great things, because you've got these clearly bad guys that Walter has to go up against, but Walter himself is not the best guy in the world, but you can't help rooting for Walter against these even worse people, and each time he defeats one of them, he becomes that much more evil, quote unquote, until at the end it's really who's left, who really is the big evil at the end. It might be Walter. You don't know, but that's one of the great things. Walter White is one of the best anti-heroes ever crafted. I have a thing for anti-heroes, whether they're in books or movies or whatnot, and Walter White is just such a believable anti-hero. It's one of the best things that I love about this story, because it takes the, like Vince Gilligan wants to say, of Mr. Chips and turning him into Scarface. You take a mild-mannered chemistry teacher and you turn him into your worst nightmare of the guy next door that you don't know what sort of evil he's doing, the guy living next to you in the burbs. And it's just amazing, because you would never think that this chemistry teacher could possibly ever turn into this. And this show shows you all of the tiny little baby steps that it takes to turn you into this person. And people, it's not hard. You do these little things, and you do it for the right reason, but every wrong step that you take takes you that much closer to becoming this horrible, evil person. And by the end of it, you are the evil that you started out fighting. And I think that's clearly what Breaking Bad kind of showed me, and that's one of the things I've always loved about it, is it's very believable in how Walter went from being a chemistry teacher to being the head of a drug-making ring, and risking his family and his friends and everything that he cares for in doing that. And it's very realistic, I thought, at least. Not that I know any chemistry teachers who have started cooking meth and tried to destroy the world, but hey, might happen.
It could happen. It's possible.
It could happen, and if you watch Breaking Bad, you see just how easily it could happen. Now I have to suspect everybody I see with an RV parked in their yard, because I do live out in the country.
There you go. Yeah, and then just the other part is that for big series, whether it's Dexter or Lost or Seinfeld or whatever, you come when there's like a known ending coming up. How they wrap it up. There's been some mixed reviews on how some of those shows ended. Without giving anything away from my standpoint, you felt things got kind of wrapped up, not necessarily neatly, but it basically you weren't left with a lot. There weren't a lot of things unresolved. They kind of did a very interesting job there, and I think you've mentioned before, Mel, that you did like how they wrapped it up.
I did. I liked it. Now the final episode does have some humor in it, in the form of some laser pointers. So when you get there, you'll enjoy that part, because it might involve the return of some people we've talked about. But I did like the last episode. I really did like how they wrapped it up. I thought it was fitting, and I'd love to be able to just blurt out to everybody how it ended, to tell you just how awesome it was, but I won't do that to you because you need to watch it and be surprised, though. Chances are you've possibly been spoiled already, but you don't know how it happens. Until you watch the whole season, the whole series, you don't understand what the ending means. So you have to watch it and make your own conclusions as to how you feel about if it was appropriate or not appropriate. I liked it. I thought it was one of the better endings of a series like that, because it's hard to wrap up something that means that much to so many people in a story that's that intense. It's hard to wrap that up and feel like the story's been told. And I applaud them for ending it before it drug on for 13 seasons and nobody cared anymore. So that's an amazing thing to do. And I believe he said, this has an end, and he came up with the end, and that was it.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, so I do feel like we can't leave this discussion without once again saying Saul Goodman is awesome and watch Better Call Saul. But one character we didn't mention, I mean, the thing is we could keep going on and on and on about all these very Tortuga, all these very interesting characters that are just, Danny
Machete was in here, folks.
Yeah, so there you go.
It was a brief role.
Yes.
But he was there. Yeah.
Yeah. And boy, there's lots of things to say there, but you should really follow his character's storyline in this, because it's pretty awesome. But I figure just to wrap up the character conversation, we can't leave characters without talking about Todd. Good old Todd, because Jesse Plemons, who I didn't watch. Gosh, it's gonna elude me here now. It was a show about football in Texas, so you should know what it is.
Oh, Friday Night Lights, probably.
Friday Night Lights. So
I didn't watch it either. It's about Texas and football, so I didn't watch it. Blah blah sports.
Yeah. But so apparently Jesse Plemons plays a very likable character in that show.
Really?
Which would be the polar opposite of what he plays. Because it's weird, because I guess this guy's almost like the definition of what a sociopath is that there's doesn't really, it's not that they're bad, they just don't have any kind of frame of reference to what they're doing's horrible. And he's just this kind of deadpan, evil, creepy guy.
Yeah, he's dead inside. And I mean, my gosh, he was, even though he wasn't necessarily a main evil, and that's hard to say, is that he was the scariest character in the show. And he wasn't even the biggest bad guy. That's the scary part of it. You're like, he's 2 steps from being Hannibal Lecter, man. Yeah, Jesse Plemons and Todd were some seriously messed up character. He did a very good job. I never saw him in anything else, and I would have a hard time watching him in anything else and not seeing creepy Todd.
Creepy Todd. You wait for whatever other character he plays. Like, oh, he's gonna shoot somebody here, isn't he?
He's gonna
do this.
he's gonna eat her or something. It's yeah. He's terribly creepy in this show, and that couldn't have been an easy thing to do. And I don't know how they found so much talent, or if it's just in the directors and the team that they had that pulled all of this talent out of everybody in the show. It was great.
Yeah, because there really isn't somebody who doesn't hit it out of the park in terms of the performing. How the character is written, how they're acted, top to bottom's great. So.
Yeah.
So if you haven't surmised by now, Mel and I really like Breaking Bad, and we think if you haven't watched it, you should too. I figured.
And watch Better Call Saul when it comes on, because we will tell you when it comes on. Trust us.
Absolutely. That will be, spoiler alert, that will be a recommendation of mine as we get closer to actual airing time on there. So just because to be kind of nurture and supporty, we'll include some social media recommendations here at the end. What we kind of figure we would do on this one here is actually be themed up. So, Mel, you want to go first?
Well, should we mention the wrap first before we go to social media? Because it's just awesome. Okay.
Yes. Oh.
So something recently flew across the internet, and it was one of those epic rap battles, and I believe it is titled Rick Grimes versus Walter White. And we will, of course, put a link up on the blog post, but it is amazing, and you all have to go watch it. Yes, it is Rick Grimes versus Walter White, Epic Rap Battles of History. And it is a YouTube video that is just freaking amazing. You have got to go watch this thing because I watched it at work, and they almost had to pick me up off the floor. I was laughing so hard. It was amazing. I just loved it. It pretty much made my day. So
yeah, it is. You know, you're gonna enjoy it the most if you've watched Walking Dead regularly and watched most of Breaking Bad because the references are so spot on and mean-spirited and back and forth.
It was just so awesome. I was sitting there and I was pausing it, trying to explain to my coworkers what such and such meant, or the pizza on the roof. I'm like, no, he did that in an episode, the pizza on the roof, and they're just staring at me like, would you please shut up? It was just so awesome. Y'all really have got to go check that out, and it will, of course, I think, be featured in the blog post.
Yes, because it is so good.
Yes.
It really, really is. Also, if you're premature to go to those social media recommendations, sorry, Mel, because there are a couple of things we should plug for folks, because if you happen to be a user of Apple products and have an iPad or iPhone and use their iBooks app, there is, for the low price of $9.99, a book that's called Breaking Bad Alchemy. And this was put together by Vince Gilligan and Sony and all this, and it is really the compendium for Breaking Bad. You have the full arc of the entire story. You've got 360 views of sets, all kinds of little Easter eggs hidden throughout the whole thing, all the actors. So you can get, if you're into any of that kind of behind the scenes kind of stuff, this is a must-have if you start watching the show and enjoy it, because it really cracks everything open and does a great job. It's a gorgeous-looking book, highly interactive, lots of little goodies throughout it. My sense is right now you are tied to getting it through the iBook option. So that's about it. So sorry, fellow Android fans. This is one you've got to get through an iPad. Yes. At least I didn't have to buy it on Amazon Prime.
No, you didn't, but someday Amazon will own all of us, and we'll be barcoded, and they'll send the little drones to pick us up and drop us off at work, and yeah.
We'll wake up in the morning, and it'll be, you might like to go walk over here right now. You might like.
Yes. I welcome my robot overlords.
Indeed.
As long as I get free shipping. Oh, I would sell my soul for free shipping. There you go. I'm a sad, sad individual. So I think we have one more, the 8-bit video game.
Oh yeah.
I don't have a link for this yet.
I'll do some digging before we get this bad boy posted up, and there is, and you've seen them for a lot of different things out there. But when someone kind of puts together the early Nintendo 8-bit look of the storyline, there's some really awesome ones for Breaking Bad, and we'll put one of the best ones up there for you in the blog post as well. So again, some goodies for those of you who have, if you've made it all the way this far with us and you've been listening and have watched Breaking Bad, there's some goodies for you out there. Be sure and check those out. But I think the 8-bit, the book, that wrap you will enjoy it more. Follow Mel and Mai's recommendation. Watch Breaking Bad. Then go back and watch this video, and you will love it. And particularly, and it's weird because you don't have a huge intersection of Breaking Bad and Walking Dead fans, but for those who are really familiar with both, this thing is just perfect.
Yes. See, I start laughing just thinking about it. the Rick Grimes in that video is just so spot on, and that whole Carl, stay back. I just love it. I love it. Okay, I'm such a nerd.
That's good.
Yes, I cannot recommend it enough, people. So I think that brings us to social media recommendations, which are on the Breaking Bad theme today.
Shockingly enough, my recommendation is the actor, comedian who plays the best character in the history of television, Saul Goodman, Better Call Saul, Mr. Bob Odenkirk. And indeed, his Twitter handle is Mr. Bob Odenkirk, MrBobOdenkirk. So Mr. Bob Odenkirk. Also, you may want to do some searches on Mr. Show, which was a comedy show that Bob Odenkirk did back in the day. That's how Vince Gilligan knew of Bob Odenkirk. But follow Mr. Bob Odenkirk. He's fun. He's currently on Fargo, doing some stuff there as he preps for Better Call Saul.
All right. I, of course, already follow him. My social media recommendation is also Breaking Bad related, of course, and it is none other than the Aaron Paul. And his Twitter handle is at @AaronPaul_8. That's AARON Paul_8. And that is, of course, the adorable punk kid Jesse. Cowhouse, and he's got a fondness for magnets too. If you haven't seen any of the memes, he likes magnets. But Aaron Paul is just, even for playing a punk kid on Breaking Bad, which is what he's best known for, he is just the sweetest guy on Twitter. He's always, I really don't ever see him being negative about things. He's funny. He's always very positive, and follow him. He's so sweet, and is always very supportive of all of the other actors that he works with. And that is sometimes a hard thing to find in Hollywood. So he's an actor that's worth following. So Aaron Paul on Twitter.
Well, there you go. I knew we had it in us. We had to get it out. We had to share with everybody our love of Breaking Bad, because it really, if you haven't had a chance to watch it, make sure it's not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of intensity to it. There's darkness, but as Mel pointed out, and then there are these, they let you come up for air. They don't hold you underwater the whole time. They keep your head underwater pretty long a few times, but they do let you come up for air. A little bit of humor, a little bit of light, to makes it just kind of survivable. But it's great art, great acting, great writing, cinematography, humor, drama. What more can you ask for? So
it was pretty much perfect, and it will probably ruin other dramas for you as well if you give it a chance.
Yep. So you got that going for you.
Yes. So here I'm telling you to go watch a show that will ruin and break television for you. No, it has made me look at other shows more critically, particularly not all shows, but dramas in the vein of Breaking Bad. It's hard to watch a serious drama and not compare it back to Breaking Bad, for me at least. So it has made me a little more critical of those types of shows, which is not a bad thing. Some of these shows really need to up their game if they're going to compare. So Watch Breaking Bad because we love it, and we really want you to understand what that epic rap battle is about so that you can laugh and fall on the floor with us because it's just that good. So I'm telling you to watch 5 seasons of a show so you can watch a 3-minute video and know what it's about.
But it's so worth it. It's so worth it. The payoff.
That's what I'm telling you to do, people, so go do it.
That's right. But you will enjoy those 5 seasons, and then you're going to get this little 3-minute dessert on top of it all. Yes. So unless you haven't watched Walking Dead, then you've got to watch 4 seasons. You're gonna be busy.
Yeah, I might have to tell you to skip the first half of this last season, though. But there was nothing really that happened there that you need to even know about, really.
That's true.
Some people die. That's it.
No, I think the Rick Grimes in that rap video is adequately covered in the first 2 seasons.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, and that was, well, for me at least, the best Walking Dead. Hopefully, there's good stuff to come. I have hopes. I haven't given up on Walking Dead yet.
Well, I think we'll have Matt take us out as we do when we're lazy.
Yep.
And we'll see folks next week.
Thanks for listening to us yap about Breaking Bad. We hope you stayed till the end. And if it's not your thing, please forgive us and come back next week for more.
Thanks.
You can contact us on our website, nurtureandsupport.net, or email us at nurtandsupp@gmail.com. That's NURTANDSUPP@gmail.com, or tweet us at nurtandsupp on Twitter.
Nurturing and supporting Journey.